All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. Certainly appreciate you taking a little bit of time out of your day on a rainy Wednesday evening to hear from these fantastic candidates who are running for the Congressional 6th District Democratic nomination up here in northern Montgomery County, as well as Frederick and all the way out into Western Maryland. I'm going to begin tonight with a land acknowledgement just to acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands served by the Piscataway people. We'd like to honor America's first people and all elders past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge that we're called upon to learn from them and share what we learn about tribal history, culture, and contributions that have often been suppressed in the telling of the story of America. And with that, just by ways of introduction, my name is Andrew Sondry. I'm the president of the Germantown Democratic Club. This is the Upcounty Democrats Candidate Forum. The Upcounty Democrats are a coalition of Democratic clubs and caucuses across northern Montgomery County that work together to increase turnout in northern Montgomery County and address issues that are close to home for us. By ways of ground rules for the evening, we have right now 6 of the candidates here with us. There are, I believe, 15 running. The other half of the candidates will be competing in a or we'll have an opportunity to hear from them in 2 weeks on March 20th in the second part of this candidate forum. The topics that are addressed tonight will be the same topics that are addressed on that evening, although the questions may vary. Each of these candidates is going to have an opportunity to introduce themselves for a brief moment, and then we're going to go right into questions that were come up with from each of the partner clubs and caucuses, as well as some submissions earlier on. We will not be taking questions directly from the audience. We ask that if anybody has anything that they need to notify any of the organizers about, they message one of the hosts in the chat. We appreciate your patience, and we're going to dive right in alphabetical order here. And as a note for the candidates, there will be no rebuttals tonight. So if someone mentions your name, feel free to reference it in the next time you have an opportunity to speak. But there will not be rebuttals because we are tight on time and there are a lot of candidates. So first, we're going to go to Peter Cho Harris.
Question.
It's Peter
1 minute.
But
Cho Harris.
Anyway, thank you very much for having all of us and giving us this opportunity to meet so many people and so many voters. I'm different, I think, than a lot of the candidates. I'm an immigrant. I was born in Greece. I was an orphan. I was adopted by a working class family when I was 2 and came to the United States to live in Boston. After my parents divorced when I was in 3rd grade, my sister and I were raised by a single mom. I worked hard and I was admitted to Harvard, the first person in my family to go to college. I worked as many as 3 jobs during the school year in order to put myself through school. And I also did a few other things, student government, sports. Jamie Raskin also did student government at that time. He was in my class. I wasn't a very good athlete.
15.
After college, I worked in Asia and Africa. So I've lived the American dream. I don't just believe in it. But today, 50% of Americans won't earn as much as their parents. I want to fight and serve the people of Maryland so that we can turn that around in this country. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I did forget to mention, we do have Sharon who is keeping time for us. So you heard there, she'll give a 15-minute or 15-second acknowledgement and then let you know when time is up. We're going to go next to April McLean Delaney.
So good evening, and thank you for hosting us. I think this is a great opportunity to meet constituents. I am running for Congress because I am running on really a common sense, common ground platform. And I really think it matches this district in that it is, as I often say, a microcosm of America. It is a very spread out district of 5 counties, rural, suburban, urban, Democrat, Republican, and I think it is a good thing to be able to message where they are. I've spent years leading a nonprofit in the public sector, and most recently was Deputy Assistant Secretary, Commerce in the Biden administration. And I'm a pragmatic problem solver, and I really seek to drive consensus across groups. I have a couple of different things I'd like to achieve in Congress while I'm here. One, to regain, of course, a woman's right to choose. Two, working on issues that affect our kids' mental health, including how tech and media impact privacy and their ability to learn, and expanding resources for mental health. I think that we have to stand up to Trump and to mega extremists, but we have to drive consensus to get things done. And you can do it when you message in a pragmatic way and talk about real kitchen table issues that affect all of the people in the district, and also work to drive consensus across diverse groups. And there you go.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go to George Gluck next. You're muted, George.
Sorry. Hello again. 1968 critically affected me because of two seminal events in order of importance. My wife and I married on July 6th, and exactly 6 months before, on January 6th, I was able to register to vote. Being a prudent progressive, I happily registered as a member of FDR's party and would proudly represent CD6 as an FDR Democrat, returning the House to the people. As you will see when we answer questions about policy, I have a long association with STEM, science, as a physics, chemistry, and biology substitute teacher in all 5 counties in CD6 now, I think. Technology as a lifelong computer programmer analyst, engineering as a software engineer and computer science substitute teacher, and math as a Navy mathematician. This experience is essential to understanding and generating legislation specifically related to areas such as cybersecurity, climate and others related to health, education, and welfare.
Thank you, George. I'm going to go next to Delegate Leslie Lopez.
Sure. Thank you so much, Andrew, and thank you everyone for convening this evening. My name is Leslie Lopez. I am a resident of Clarksburg. I am a wife and a mom of 2 little boys that you will probably burst in here at some point this evening, so apologies in advance. I feel a little bit silly trying to tell you who I am, because I know many of you that are here tonight. But most importantly, for the past 6 years, I've been showing you exactly who I am, what my values are, and what I'm capable of achieving. And that's because I have had the great honor of representing District 39 for 2 terms now in the Maryland General Assembly. I'm a deputy majority whip, so a part of the leadership team and part of all those decision-making assessments that go into the body. I'm also a former president of the Women's Caucus, so I got to lead on reproductive care. And most importantly, I'm from a working class background, raised by a single mother who is a veteran in the United States Navy and became a public school teacher. So proud to be the only union leader in this race.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Adrian Petrus.
Yes, my name is Adrian Petrus. I'm a U.S. Navy disabled veteran, and I work in security field at FDA. I'm running for Congress because the Congress, our system is broken. I have faced discrimination in workplace. I have faced forced arbitration instead of going to court when the company was committing fraud. Then I got fired while I was on workers' compensation. As a protected veteran of the Vietnam era, the arbitration doesn't have jurisdiction over it, only Department of Labor. But because of forced arbitration, the time expired for me to file with Department of Labor like I supposed to, because it took over 3 years to get to arbitration. That was because the union and the company were colluding with each other to keep it going. So I ran out of time to complain about that. So therefore, I want to end forced arbitration, and I want to to end discrimination in workplace. I make it more for American people to be able to work safely in the workplace.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Mayor Takesha Martinez.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I just want to say I'm the CEO of the largest city in Western Maryland and also in the Eastern Panhandle. I grew up in foster care. I did a lot of work within poetry and mediation in order to represent my city and bring us together. Right now, I oversee $400 million worth of development and also 1.8 billion in this county and water. I have a clear understanding of how municipal government works. Also, all government should be local government. I'm a hometown homegirl. I'm seeing every day in my community, but more importantly, I am seeing healing and healing the divide. I walked away with a unanimous vote for appointed by my council for mayor.
15.
So I understand how to work across the aisle, but I also stand very firm on my convictions of who I am as a Democratic woman. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Destiny Drake West.
Okay, fine.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Destiny Drake West. I am a mom, military spouse, and a resident of Germantown, Maryland. I am an award-winning policy expert who has served at 2 federal agencies, both HHS and HUD. I have also served in legislative roles in Annapolis and also on Capitol Hill. I have spent many years serving the people of this district from behind the scenes. So you may not know my face as much, but you recognize my work when you look at the results of bringing resources from housing, affordable housing, to a diverse healthcare workforce. And so I am really pleased to be running because I believe this is a time that the 6th district needs bold, transformative leadership. We need a woman from Maryland with our values
15.
and views representing us in Congress. And I'm looking forward to this discussion. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. I appreciate the opportunity to get to know you all a little bit better. And I'm going to dive right into the questions that we have for tonight. So I'd like to start off with what you think are the issues of greatest concern to the residents of the 6th district. So I'm going to go now first to Deputy Secretary April McLean Delaney. And we're going to rotate through that way.
Well, there's a multitude of issues, a lot of kitchen table issues, healthcare, transportation, of course, our education in schools. But I would say some of the key issues that I've found as I've been talking to constituents and I've been traveling and diving deep. It actually is something that I've done while I was a nonprofit in the Biden administration. It really deals with youth mental health. There's skyrocketing anxiety and depression in our across America, but in our youth, many of it driven by screen time and social platforms, but also, some of the issues coming out of COVID. I believe we should have more mental health resources and also more health in general. I've also been focusing a lot on using investment into Western and Mountain Maryland, many of it from green energy, the IRA, the CHIPS Act, and all sorts of different types of investments to really drive new jobs and productivity. And of course, women's reproductive freedoms are so important. I'm the mother of 4 daughters, ages 31 to 16. And I think that's an important issue for all of us.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to George Gluck. You're muted.
I don't want you to
And
hear.
we can start him over on time.
Okay, thank you. So this affects all of everybody in CD6. We have a very diverse population here, but economics affects us all. So in September of 2020, the RAND Corporation, whose mission is to help improve policy and decision-making through research and analysis, published a paper about wealth distribution from 1975 to 2018. Time magazine headlined their article about this paper as, and I quote, "The top 1% of Americans have taken $50 trillion from the bottom 90%, and that's made us less secure," unquote. That 50 trillion could have been better used to fix and improve our crumbling infrastructure, especially in Western Maryland. And as Republican Theodore
15.
Roosevelt said, we stand for a living wage high enough to make morality possible, to provide for education, recreation, to care for immature members of the family, to maintain the family during periods of sickness, and to permit a reasonable saving age. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Delegate Lopez.
Sure, thank you. Well, I'm in a unique position to answer this question because I am a representative of a working family that lives in the district. And every day, all day for the past 6 years, I've been talking to constituents about what their concerns are. And I think there's a whole multitude of things, but the most frequent thing that people approach me about are transportation and infrastructure. Our transportation, our budget was just dramatically cut, and that has huge impacts on just about every different community within our district. The other thing that I hear so much about is about healthcare expenses, the unpredictability of it. I'm working right now on medical debt legislation that I think is really transferable at the federal level as well. But the other thing, particularly in the western parts of the state, is opioids. And so I think Congressman
15.
Trone has created a great legacy for destigmatizing and working on this issue. It's something that I'm working on currently as a lawmaker. There's some federal policies that he's suggests as part of a work group, and I've introduced them in our legislature. And I'm currently working on them.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm going to go to Adrian Petrus. You're muted, sir.
Okay. I have spent a lot of time in Western Maryland back in the 90s and early 2000s, and even to the last 5 years. One of the issues over there is jobs. I mean, after we closed the paper mill, a lot of people around Luke, Maryland, didn't have no more jobs. That was their way of surviving. But what I want to do is, if I get elected, it's bring money into the state of Maryland to build a high-speed rail to connect Western Maryland to DC. In that way, those folks up in Western Maryland could have a better chance of jobs, so they could have more economics, they could afford better life for their families. And when it comes down to house affordability around Montgomery County and Frederick, we need to figure out how to work with HUD to send some relief to people. I mean, I'm glad I have faced foreclosure myself. I'm fighting PMI to be removed from my loan, which is almost impossible, but within 100 days in office, change.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Mayor Martinez.
Yeah, so everything is around public safety. I'm a mediator and I listen intently from one side as the mayor, from that side as the CEO, but then from the other side when I'm facilitating. I just facilitated Gatekeepers, which is a reentry program in Hagerstown on a Saturday morning, 9:30 in the morning on a rainy day. They had 93 people. And in that room, you find different resources, but what you're hearing is public safety. Everything is around public safety and not having access to healthcare, democracy being threatened. Those things make people feel less safe. And so that's what I like to do. I want to facilitate conversations in order for people to feel safe. I had to go to conflict resolution and mediation with my own chief of police when I was elected as city council. I'm always willing to have conversations. Another thing is reproductive health care. I'm in Western Maryland. That is an issue for us. And then transportation is another thing. We do not have a good infrastructure here in Western Maryland in order to make sure that people can get those equitable jobs.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Destiny Drake West.
So having traveled across all 5 counties in our district, I can tell you the issue that comes up the most to me is poverty. The lack of economic mobility has really impacted our families. 33% of our families are struggling to meet their basic needs. And as I said to people all the time, that number shoots up dramatically for African-American families like mine and for Hispanic families and for families living in rural areas. And so those issues around poverty exacerbates issues related to affordable housing, related to affordable and access to affordable healthcare. And that drives even more, I would say, rates higher, when it comes to opioid use and addiction and overdose. So all of these things are interconnected, but it starts at the root issue of poverty. And so when I get to Congress, my plan is to really focus on ways to bring those resources to the community, and make sure that our families are in a position to grow financially, and any barriers, especially as it relates to small business ownership, we are addressing those issues. So for example, in fiscal year 2022, we missed out on $3.6 billion worth of federal dollars that could have gone to our women-owned small businesses. And so those are things that I will not allow to fall between the cracks on my watch. And so I'm looking forward to working on those issues in Congress. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Peter Coharis.
So as I mentioned, I was an immigrant and I was raised by a single mom. I know very well how difficult it is sometimes for families to even make a decent living. So that's my focus: economic development, jobs, affordable higher education, which is everybody is struggling with, and also vocational education, so that we can grow in Montgomery County and throughout Western Maryland. We haven't enjoyed that since before COVID. Northern Virginia, let's be honest, has eaten our lunch. I've worked on economic development in Asia on various projects, both big and small, and in Africa. The approach that works there can work here at home. Community development finance institutions, knowing what it takes to attract businesses. Adrian mentioned the paper plant in Luke, Maryland. I tried to get an international buyer to come in and take over, but it was for a medical facility and the pollution made it impossible. So anybody who tells you that environmental protection, which I also care passionately about, and global warming is an enemy to business development doesn't know what they're talking about. Environmental protection promotes business.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go now to our next question, which is about reproductive rights. So as everyone knows, the Supreme Court struck down a woman's right to choose in 2022 in the now infamous Dobbs decision. But even more recently, state Supreme Courts have been going as far as to eliminate access to IVF. I'm wondering what each of you would do in specific as a member of Congress to protect not only access to IVF, but also access to a whole array of reproductive care services. And I'm going to start this time with George Gluck. And you're muted, sir.
Sorry, you're muting me automatically, and I forget to do it. Anyway, Republicans have placed pro-life measures on the ballot for decades to attract pro-life voters in order to win elections. Even after running all three branches of federal government, they refused to pass a total ban on abortions so they could continue this strategy. If they win in 2024, we can bet on them finally attempting to attain this goal. We know that when abortions were illegal in the past, they were still being performed with often disastrous results. I know nobody who is for abortions, and most of us are and will continue to be pro-choice. And if it takes legislation to make that national,
15.
we should in fact do that, and I'll fight to do that in Congress.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Delegate Lopez.
Sure, thank you. Well, it is clear that the Republican Party has gone to beyond extreme measures when it comes to weaponizing choice and attacking bodily autonomy. And so that's why in my current capacity as a state legislator, as president of the Women's Caucus, I led our position on choice for the first time in 40 years. The organization took a position on it. And so we fought with Hogan tooth and nail every step of the way to make sure our rights were protected here in the state. I'm also introducing a bill on Friday that will create an abortion access fund to make sure that all of the folks who are coming here to our very safe state have access to care. So the things I would work on at a federal level: number one, we need to codify Roe v. Wade and make sure that there is a standard and threshold. We also need to protect people's data and make sure that they are not vulnerable to criminal liability no matter what state they're in. And then the fourth thing we need to do is protect clinic workers, because there's been a 900% increase on the threat of people who are performing a very normal healthcare function.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Adrian Petrus.
Yes, for me, I always believe that the women have the right to choose whatever they want to do with their body. From my own experience, when my ex-wife was pregnant with our daughter, only daughter I have, around 8 months, her doctor went for a back surgery, so a new doctor took over. And they kept telling us that the baby is disformed, the baby has a small head. We went to specialists, they wanted to have an abortion. at 8 months, which was unheard of it. I was very, very lucky that my ex-wife was a strong woman, believed in God, and said, you know what? We're going to accept the baby the way she comes, the way God gave us. And actually, the baby came up perfect. Nothing wrong with the baby. So I'm not sure if it was the insurance fraud that was going on with the doctors, but doctors can be wrong too. But at the same time, I do believe that the women should have the right to choose what to do with their bodies. But at one point, the father should have the right to say, at around 8 months pregnancy, that hey, we're not going to have an abortion.
Time.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your response. I'm going to go next to Mayor Martinez.
So I am a mother of 4 daughters and 2 granddaughters, and it's very, very important that we have the right to control our bodies. And so, of course, codify Roe versus Wade, also federal contraceptive resource program, protect workers at abortion clinics. Actually, as the mayor of the city, I've had an issue with that with right next to our Democratic office, making sure that I'm meeting with the folks right there on the street that are doing the work to make sure people get in safely. Also, I'm running on a comprehensive women's agenda, and that's everything is rolled out. You can always check my website for the details on that. Again, I'm a mom of 4. I grew up in foster care. I had my first daughter. I was on state insurance. We were both wards of the state. And so that access to healthcare and reproductive care is very important. I was allergic to birth control, and allergic to the one birth control. Maybe I could have been other birth control if it was not state. And having that choice to be able to find other options. And I think that that's important with women, especially Black women in rural counties.
Time.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Destiny Drake West.
Thank you. Listen, as someone who has experienced 3 medical abortions in order to save my life, I know firsthand the importance of having choice and having access to those medical services, and to protecting the caregivers who are providing those services. Right now, Maryland has for a long time enjoyed a safe haven for women when it comes to reproductive rights, and we can't take that for granted. And when we see what's happening all across this country, we should know that at any minute, depending on who takes office, all of those rights that we enjoy so freely today can be gone in a second. And so we need someone who is going to be fearless in Congress, who's not going to buckle under the pressure. And what encourages me most is seeing so many women across this district who has broken with their party and with their families to stand in support of reproductive justice for women. And so that is the most important thing we can do, is really broaden our coalition across the aisle. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go to Peter Coharis next.
So I strongly believe that Dobbs was wrongly decided and was an abuse of judicial power. I will defend reproductive rights as an attorney, as somebody who's litigated constitutional matters. I think I have the skills and the knowledge to do so. I'm motivated by the fact that I have 2 young daughters, and I will protect them. I will not allow them to grow up in a world where their safety, their health, and their autonomy over their own bodies is threatened by a judge or threatened by a state legislature. And that means, and also that they should be able to live and work wherever they want in America without fear. I also will take on a Republican Party that's passion for protecting children begins at conception and ends with birth. It's pathetically an old line, but it continues to be true. I will take them on and expose their hypocrisy and promote child and women and children. I used to work for UNICEF in Sudan. I understand the importance of protecting women and children after they're born. Finally, I want to end the stigma associated with adoption, both adopted children and women who give up their children for adoption. We need to make that part of our conversation when it comes to protecting women and children as well.
Thank you. I'm going to go last but not least to Deputy Secretary McLean Delaney.
Well, reproductive freedoms, reproductive rights are human rights. And I mean, this is something that is incredibly important to me as an attorney and one who's served on numerous boards, uplifting women and dealing actually with reproductive freedoms, both domestically and internationally, and also as the mother of 4 daughters. It is important, and it has been left, as you know, on a state level with Roe for a long time. We obviously, like many of my the other people on this Zoom, we have to codify Roe v. Wade. We need to uplift our maternal health, have expanded maternal health issues. We need to look at, it's ridiculous in terms of the frozen embryo and the Alabama Supreme
15.
Court case. That's ridiculous. But we need to really focus on pressing hard for these sorts of things. I agree with Leslie, having worked at Common Sense Media for 15 years and being a tech expert, that we need to really protect the data of a lot of these women so that they are not tracked. And that's it. There's so much
Thank you
to
so
do.
much.
There's so much to say for all of us in that quick 30 seconds.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of topics to cover tonight and not a lot of time. But I'm going to stick on the topic of healthcare for just a moment, and I'm going to move on to the next question, which is many candidates run on this idea of achieving universal healthcare in one way or another. The path to universal coverage has varied from candidate to candidate over the years, and the country has at times alternated between different ideas about how we get there. So I'm wondering what you see as the best path to achieve universal health care. And I'm going to start with Delegate Lopez.
Sure. So, healthcare is the thing I hear about the most, and it is an incredibly broken system where it only really seems like wealth is going to insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies. And so, it's a system that's not patient focused. And so, I think moving towards a single payer system is the best way to do it. I've seen reports that say that the average American household would save 40% of their healthcare costs if we move towards that system. And there's all sorts of benefits that come from just people having their health in place. There's economic stability. There's just an incredible benefit to having healthy people in our workforce. And so I think to
15.
me, that would be the best way forward.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Adrian Petrus.
Yes, if we want to change the universal healthcare, we have to look at Europe and see how it works in Europe. For me as a veteran, I'm dealing with the VA system. It's a broken system, to be honest with you. It's like I need physical therapy, for example, and they send me to people that cannot help me, but they'll not pay for good therapies, physical therapy. And that's something that we need to change. But if we really want to look, let's fix the VA system first, where all the veterans have opportunity to get medication from the nearest CVS or Safeway instead of going to the VA system and wait 10 days for their medication to get home. But let's really look at the cost of medication today. Most senior citizens in District 6 cannot afford in Western Maryland to even pay for
15.
a copay for their medications. My ex-in-laws are one of them that has to skip on medication because they cannot afford the copays. We need to change that, but we have to change the whole industry in order to change to universal healthcare.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go to Mayor Martinez next.
I support working towards Medicare for all. I ran for city council of Hagerstown with no health care. And I say all the time that state health care wasn't enough, but it was something. And so I believe that one of the biggest safety issues for me here in Hagerstown as the mayor is when folks don't have health care. And when they do have overdose and we use our ambulance services and our emergency services and a strain on it. And so I am totally supportive of universal healthcare, and I know the path to get there. What is that path if leadership changes constantly? And I think that that's the conversation that needs to start happening now within our communities. And that way, we're making sure we're supporting someone every single time that goes in the seat that supports a
15.
clear path to get there, and not just talking about it. Making sure that women and children in rural areas also have access to healthcare and dental. Dental is another thing that is a problem. I mean, you can help returning citizens get everything back, but if they don't have their teeth, then they don't have their confidence to go smile and have a job interview. And those are the people that I work with every single day. And we can get them up in working order. We can't get them dental.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go to Destiny Drake West.
I support working towards Medicare for all. I believe it could work in Western Maryland. I wasn't always of this mind, but I believe we can get it done under the condition that we really focus on more investments in diversifying and expanding our fragile health workforce. This is something that my former colleagues and I worked tirelessly to achieve while I was serving at the Department of Health and Human Services in the Health Resources and Services Administration. We really looked at barriers to health workforce recruitment from people in diverse communities and from rural areas, which is where a lot
15.
of the inequities are found. And so I believe if we make those investments, then we can actually achieve a system like Medicare for All that will not collapse under pressure from having a lack of I would say
Time.
workforce professionals. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go to Peter Coharis.
So you couldn't design a more complex, convoluted, and as a result, expensive system than what we have in the United States, right? We've got government programs, the VA that Adrian talked about, Medicare and Medicaid. We have private, obviously employer-based healthcare. We have Obamacare for people who don't have employer-based healthcare, and we even have self-pay. So how do we rationalize all of that and try to do it in a way that we can afford it given our sizable budget deficits? Well, it's not going to be easy. It's got to be a pathway. But I think we do it in part by looking to successful programs in Canada and in Europe to try to bend the cost curve down. But also importantly, Takesha's absolutely right about
15.
dental care, mental health, opioid. Leslie mentioned opioids in Western Maryland. We've got to be able to deal with not just physical health care, but current health care, but also expand offerings to really take care of our citizens. And
Time.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Deputy Secretary McLean Delaney.
Well, healthcare should be a right and it cannot be a privilege. There should be universal health care for all. And I do believe that we need to continue to build upon the Affordable Care Act and Obamacare and make sure that it is accessible and affordable to all residents of Maryland and across the country. I do applaud the Biden administration for working to cap insulin prices and to lower drug prices. But there's more to do. And I agree with Peter. I mean, you've got to look at how those are priced. It's a convoluted with many different parties in it, and something that is something that we are all trying to work together to figure this out. Mental health care is probably, I keep saying, skyrocketing anxiety and depression, PTSD from some of our vets, and we really need to incorporate that and have it covered within any sort of comprehensive health care, and dental as well. And the last thing I would say is rural hospitals are under assault. They're under-resourced. Looking at ways to find more resources for rural hospital and using telehealth and other technological innovation to help in that arena.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go last but not least to George Gluck.
Thank you. So I've participated at a sit-in at Senate's office building, hoping to expand Medicare for All legislation and have it passed. As a contractor, I helped Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, their contractors, design and implement Eyeglass, the CMS accounting system that processes about 4.4 million Medicare fee-for-service claims daily. I helped to make it more efficient too. I later helped implement the system by which insurance providers under Obamacare annually reported the details of their several health insurance plans for citizens to choose from. Probably the oldest one here, and a user of Medicare myself. Over the last couple of weeks, because I want to continue running, I went to
15.
a cardiologist who gave me some very expensive tests so I can keep running. And I can't say it cost me nothing because we paid for it. We pay for this throughout our working lives, and then we pay for part of it out of our Social Security checks too.
Time.
Said 5. Okay. So that works well. I have acquaintances who have Medicare Advantage, and I'd love to go into the horror that is.
Thank you so much. I'm going to move to the next topic now, which has to do with student loan debt. obviously this is one that's personal for me as a student in Maryland. It is also a major topic recently as the Biden administration has taken many steps to try and expand access to student loan forgiveness. So I'm wondering what you would do as a member of Congress to build upon what the administration has done and combat some of the ways that the Supreme Court has tried to walk back access to student loan debt relief. And I'm going to start with Adrian Petrus.
For me, I grew up in Europe. I was born in Europe. My nephew's going to college in Germany right now for free. And I do believe that every American deserves to have free education. We shouldn't even be talking about student loans because student loans should never exist. This is the biggest, in my opinion, the biggest scheme in the United States is student loans. Because at the end of the day, education should be a right for every single student. They should be able to go to school. So in Congress, I'll make sure that I'll put a bill forward that everybody should have free education. And we just have to figure out how to do it. Yeah, the debt is at $34 trillion right now, but we can figure out a way to possibly bring
15.
a financial system in place, because that's the only industry that's monopolized in the United States is the financial system. And we do need to bring a digital currency in place to go with the US dollar or to do all those programs for the American people.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Mayor Martinez.
So I would say we need to eliminate student loan. I said down. Sorry, trying to talk so fast for 1 minute. Eliminate student loan debt crisis. Nowhere else is it like this. And I have one daughter out of the 4 that went away to college. She actually went to Bethune-Cookman. And sometimes I feel she's getting ready to have her first child. She's the one who followed the plan and did it correctly, right? However, she's also the one that financially is in the most crisis because of her student loan debt, her car insurance, everything is like channeled around what she owes when she got an education. And I believe that those are the issues that young people are dealing with, that they're struggling with. You know, you got to get an education, but once you get an education, you got to make enough money to pay off that education. So establishing grant programs to make up for that, to be able to help those college graduates, those ones that did follow the path, to be able to stay financially on board. Yeah, I always feel like she's the one that feels punished because financially she's trying to catch up.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Destiny Drake-West.
So this one is pretty close to my heart. I mentioned earlier that I was born into poverty to both parents who were at the time of my birth addicted to drugs. That locked us into a cycle of ongoing poverty, and I carried that into my young adulthood. My equalizer was education. Going to college, getting my degree, my PR degree, and then going on to get my master's degree is what helped me break out of poverty and into the middle class. And so I believe that we should be supporting young people in their pursuit to enter the workforce. And while on one hand, I do support some loan forgiveness, I also believe we should be thinking more longer term and create more pathways to career and industry. And we did do some of that at HRSA. I had the opportunity to present a $100 million proposal. It was called HAPPY, the Health Apprenticeship Pipeline Program for Youth. And it presented a lot of potential. And so those are things I would like to work on in Congress. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go to Peter Coharis.
Well, I've already spoken about how this is one of my big priorities, higher education, affordable higher education, and vocational training, because where I grew up, nobody had gone to college. People wanted good paying jobs, and getting a union job, getting a vocational training was key to entering the middle class and staying there. But I want to talk a little bit about something that I don't hear other Democrats talk about, and I think it's key for us, except for the governor of Pennsylvania has started to talk about this, which is the incredible increase. If you look for the last 20 years, the cost of capital, the cost of borrowing has been really low in the United States. Inflation recently was a bump up. But 2 industries, healthcare and higher education, the costs have skyrocketed. There is no excuse in
15.
higher education for this. We have got to have a very tough conversation with colleges and universities about bending the cost curve substantially lower. They can't be supporting their building expansion, their expansion of administrators and others on the backs of young kids
Time.
who are pass-throughs of federal debt, federal loans. We have to start bending the cost curve and having some very tough negotiations with America's universities and colleges.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go now to Deputy Secretary McLean Delaney.
Well, I agree with so many others on this in this forum that you know, our children and our youth are our future, and education transforms lives from preschool to high school, and of course college education. And as the daughter of an Idaho potato farmer, you know, education changed the trajectory of my life and my husband. First in his family to go to college. Union electricians helped him go to college. But it's a very key is that we need, yes, to bend the trajectory on the costs of education, but one, we need to make community college free and to have more technical training so that we can then drive down the costs so that we can train and educate, and also more career and
15.
technical training. In addition to, we need to really work on interest rates when they do take out these loans, that they're affordable interest rates and they are structured in a way which matches the way in which they can pay. And then last, I would say that we really need to really focus about how we can
Time.
drive down the costs of many of these educations and make them palatable for different people within the state of Maryland.
Thank you. I'm going to go next to George Gluck.
Okay, I too am an immigrant. Parents came here with nothing except a baby under their arms. My father was a tailor, my mother stayed at home. That was a different era. In fact, one of my campaign slogans is "Make America Good Again," this time for all of us. I benefited tremendously from going a great educational system in New York City, right up through Brooklyn College. It cost $50, not $50 a credit or even a course. It was $50 a semester. And we have to return to that in some way. But education, public education is generally a state and local issue, you know, higher education for college. So during the last recession, 2007, 2008, somehow we found ways to give banks trillions of dollars at almost zero interest rate. And we have to find a way to do that for our students as well.
Time.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And then last but not least, I'm going to go to Delegate Lopez.
Thank you. I've been anxiously awaiting this because I am so just upset with our student loan debt system. Just like Ms. Drake West said and Mayor Martinez said, this is a very personal thing for me. I'm the only one of my siblings to go to college, and I worked my butt off to put myself through all of my degrees. I was a domestic worker for several years just to be able to finance my education and make it to a middle-class life. And so for the past 5 years as a lawmaker, I've introduced student loan debt bills that are appropriate for our level of government. I think at the federal level, things that we need to do are make the public service loan forgiveness program actually solvent and expand it where we can. I think we need to rein in on all the predatory private student loan debt servicers. There's a whole other part of
15.
student loan debt we don't talk about. It's these ad hoc trusts that set up. And then also we need to continue on the path of forgiveness and really focus on interest. There's no reason why the US government needs to charge interest on these types of loans. Costs more to service them
Time.
than it does they make.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go into some of our pre-submitted questions as well now. I think a big topic that a lot of folks were concerned about that we heard from was climate change. And so to sort of amalgamate some of these questions, what do you see, since the Biden administration and Congress recently passed the biggest climate change legislation that we've had in a generation in the Inflation Reduction Act, what do you see as the next step that Congress can take to build on that legislation and work with the next administration, hopefully another Biden administration, to pass more and stronger climate change regulations that are going to get us to a cleaner and brighter future for everyone? And I'm going to start with Mayor Martinez.
All right. Wow. The hard question. First time, the first one. So I'd say equitable and just transition away from fossil fuel dependency, as well as retrofit programs to help homeowners with energy efficiency. Also, being here in rural Western Maryland, I believe that we need to make sure that rural communities protect their livelihoods while also making sure that as we're the fastest growing area, Western Maryland is. And with all the development going on, we also need to make sure that we're protecting, for instance, our finite resource, which is water. And so I definitely would be in support of those things.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Destiny Drake West.
I'm always struggling to come off of mute. But I, I stand with the Maryland League of Conservation Voters. They've outlined 3 things they believe that the state can do, but I also believe we can scale it up at the federal level. The first of those 3 is to call for a robust funding mechanism that will help us, the way we've seen changes in New York City and California, to reduce our emissions and to also create renewable energy sources such as solar, for example, and to create more green jobs. I think if we do a better job as Democrats of tracking our successes and amplifying them loudly, we can really broaden our support base. Because traveling across the district, I've met a lot of farmers who are not in support of a lot of the measures that the Democrats are pushing forward, but it's to their own detriment because it's hurting their crops and things like that, and their ability to keep their businesses afloat. So we have to do a better job of celebrating our wins loudly.
Fine.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Peter Coharis.
So some of the obvious things, I agree with the Biden administration. I want to support them and their emphasis on green economy. These are good paying jobs, and we need to keep them in the United States and make Maryland among the leaders in promoting and keeping those jobs. Contrast that with the Republican policy. Their policy can be summarized in 4 words now, according to the next nominee for president. Call it a hoax. That's the bad news. The good news is we're starting to see poll numbers where even Republicans are starting to understand the reality of greenhouse gases and climate change because of what we've been experiencing over the last few years. We also have to focus internationally, right? Secretary Kerry just stepped down from the post, but international agreements that have metrics, verification, and some kind of enforcement mechanism to make people pay a price are key. And I've spent a lot of time, as I've said, in emerging market countries in Latin America, Asia, and Africa. We have got to move green technology to emerging market countries. If we don't, the planet is going to become an ashtray. We have to jump over old technologies.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Deputy Secretary McLean Delaney.
Well, this is one of the most important issues I want to focus on. Climate change is an, existential threat to all of us, and we need to obviously work both domestically and globally. Domestically, having served in commerce and worked with Secretary Raimondo, there is a ton of green energy, the legislation, bipartisan legislation that came through, billions of dollars through the IRA, meaning infrastructure, green energy, lots of ways to invest. And I think that will really help in terms of driving jobs and helping in Western and Mountain Maryland. 2, we need to invest in more R&D. We've got to innovate our way out of this. We can start talking about emissions and all of these other things, but we have to put in hundreds of millions of dollars in an ROA return to really help innovative companies start to tackle climate change. 3, we've got to also look at how AI can be integrated into a lot of different uses to be able to, and I know NIST, my sister agency at Commerce, was always also looking at these. I have 2 others
so much.
on my website. Yes.
Sorry, we're running short on time, so thank you so much for that. I'm going to go to George Gluck next.
Okay, so I'm going to make this more personal. Tomorrow, I'm substituting for a science teacher at South Hagerstown High School. I'll be teaching about nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is touted by some to be the way to avoid total climate catastrophe. Of course, other proponents of other renewable methods, there's some. Some of are not only talking, some of us are not only talking, but walking and even perhaps running to do what we can as individuals to help. My wife and I, for example, drive a hybrid, getting over 40 miles per gallon, and an EV getting over 4 miles per kilowatt hour. So the solar panels on our roof are actually giving us all the energy we need to run that car, even to Hagerstown and back. We also grow greens and herbs in a tree of sorts in our kitchen that uses a tiny fraction of the water needed if we were to grow the same outdoors. I'd love to help CD6, Maryland, and our country down similar paths. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Delegate Lopez.
Thank you. So, as the mom of 2 young boys who seem to be very well behaved right now, I want my kids and all of our children to drink clean water and breathe clean air. And it is clear that climate change is our generation's existential threat. And so I was very happy to support climate change or Climate Solutions Now Act in our legislature, which was the state's, or I should say, our state was the most expansive way to deal with renewable energy and clean energy transition. The pressure to get all of this out in 1 minute is so much, I promise you. But Biden's Infrastructure Act was, or excuse me, Inflation Reduction Act was incredible. The real issue with all of these, we can have all these great plans, but we have Republicans who are in the pockets of big oil, and they need to be taken out of office if we're actually going to be serious about taking on this issue. This is a political problem, not an idea problem.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go last but not least to Adrian Petrus.
Well, probably I'm only the candidate in the whole country or the whole world that see clean energy different ways. I always look into helium-3, which could be mined on the moon. And with clean energy, with helium-3, we can build clean nuclear fusion reactors that could give us energy for the next 1,000 years with all the helium-3 that it's on the moon. I know a lot of people don't believe in it, but I do, because I'm looking at the Earth from 1,000 years from now. We can do a little bit today and tomorrow, but it's not going to save the planet. We're going to kill the planet within the next 300 years if we're still doing what we're doing right now. One country cannot change the climate change around the world if China, Russia, India, other countries don't get on to do the same thing that we do. We're spending trillions and trillions of dollars on this climate change and zero to go mine the moon for helium-3 that could give us clean energy for the next 10,000 years. So my focus will be in Congress is to push for the idea, push technology, use the AI to give us that push to go ahead and mine the moon for helium-3.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm going to move to the next topic. We had several questions submitted on, and that has to do with affordable housing. So one of the big challenges I think that the state and local governments deal with is this affordable housing crisis that we have in the region. But given that this is a regional issue and not just a Maryland issue, and that it is something that is particularly a problem in many states along the East and West Coast, as well as down in the South, what would you do as a member of Congress to expand federal support for affordable housing initiatives? And I'm going to start with Destiny Drake West.
This is one of my favorite topics. I was the former program lead, principal point of authority, and just program lead at HUD. Let me just leave it there. At HUD, and my job was to run the Title V program, which is a federal surplus property program. And that program, in my opinion, is one of the most fiscally responsible programs we have addressing homelessness and affordable housing in the United States. And the issue that we kept bumping up against is that we didn't have a budget line Congress simply did not understand the impact that we were able to make through that program, and therefore they did not fund us. And so we had to really, really work hard with local government entities and nonprofits to try to get them through our system so that they can use federal resources, like buildings that were no longer in use, to support homelessness. And so I would bridge the knowledge divide or the knowledge gap in Congress, which I think is the most significant barrier to progress, by using my expertise to educate my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Peter Coharis.
So while I think congressional funding has a role, not everything is best done with a federal program and with federal dollars. I think a member of Congress can be creative and can really serve as an incubator in communities to, as I said, promote economic development, attract infrastructure, investment dollars, and attract investment in the local community, as well as good jobs and economic development. So one of the things I want to talk about is community development finance institutions. It's the same model that we use throughout the world that the United States uses. They make money, so Republicans like them, and they're very effective. They're used for housing and all sorts of other areas. We have about 12 of them in Maryland. None of them are in the 6th district. We need to develop those capacities and work to educate our communities about how to leverage low interest rates and dollars to really develop housing and fulfill other needs in the district.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Deputy Secretary McLean Delaney.
In traveling across all 5 counties within the district, this is always brought up in every forum and every time in terms of affordable housing and what makes so many very upset about inflation. Of course, it is improving jobs and increasing wages, which is a very big issue. But I do agree with some of my other colleagues in terms of how we do innovation, how we are creative in using tax incentives and other ways to really galvanize investment by the private sector and doing public-private sector, really brainstorming about how to be innovative. Actually, while my husband was in Congress, he had furthered with Jeb Harris, with a bipartisan bill called it was the Housing Reform Act. And really what it did is it put a small fee on every Fannie Mae mortgage and then put it into a trust that would then 5-fold increase housing across the country for affordable housing. I think there are a lot of creative ways that you can start looking at financing models to really drive that affordability. And it just has to be intentional focus and a lot of dialogue.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to George Gluck.
Okay, so I'll answer that by giving you an example of a method I thought of the first time I ran for office in 2009 when there was a special election for a county council. Donald Praisner had passed away, and I thought I'd give it a shot just to see what it was like to run for office. But that was a time when poorer folks here in the county were losing their homes. They were being forfeited to banks because they couldn't afford them any longer. Loss of jobs, and some of them had been bought and given mortgages they probably shouldn't have been given. At any rate, the property tax here in the county, I think true everywhere, is regressive. We all pay, back then it was like 90 cents per $100 of value of your property. And so I chose to make it more regressive. The houses that were being forfeited would pay anywhere from 25 cents to 50, and then those that were in the upper brackets would pay more than the 90 cents, up to $1.50, I think, but the same total amount would be.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Sorry to cut you off. We're running short on time. Appreciate the patience. I'm going to go next to Delegate Lopez.
Thank you. I feel like there's been a lot of great things that have been said about this issue in terms of tactics and how to address it. I think one thing that I'd like to add to this conversation is that we talk about affordable housing a lot, but it's really code word for poverty, right? And it's a problem, but it's a symptom of bigger problems that we have, which is economic instability for working folks. So you can't talk about affordable housing without talking about the impacts of inflation and the fact that people are paying more for food out of their monthly budget than in the past 30 years. You can't talk about affordable housing without talking about the costs of childcare, which almost every working family experiences in one way or another. You can't talk about affordable housing in a vacuum outside of
15.
the conversation about stagnant wages and the fact that we're just not progressing as much as we need to on that front. And so the short answer is it's an inventory issue as well. And there's federal programs that are not being effectively used for affordable housing, but it's a symptom of a bigger problem.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Adrian Petrus.
For me, I have my own experience with foreclosures, and I've been dealing with it for the last few months, but finally now we're out of it. But the problem that I see in affordable housing, it's salary. How many people can bring salaries into the household? For me, I'm by myself. I'm a single guy. So I have to pay the mortgage on my own salary. And when I lost one of the jobs, because I was working 2 full-time jobs, it did affect me a lot. And now I'm still dealing with them trying to remove the PMI, which is almost impossible. But for me, what I see that the best thing for Congress to do is put 20 or 30%, help people with 20, 30% at 0% interest,
15.
and pay the loan when you sell the house, pay that loan back. But in that way, we'll give a chance to a family to be able to afford homes. That's the only solution that we have today. It's having a program from federal government, like a half program did while they had funding. So we need to fund half again, so they could go ahead and help people like myself that with 0% interest loans just to get out of the war.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Mayor Martinez.
Thank you. I would say I agree with Delegate Lopez with it is, it's a poverty issue. And I will say it was very important once I got elected to city council that Congressman Trone actually supported us with within the city for our blighted properties. One of the things about Hagerstown is that we've had like a lot of blights. We've had landlords and people come in and buy up a bunch of properties and put them under LLCs and rent them out. And then when they don't pass code, they've abandoned them. And so what we've done is going to Congressman Trone, we got some money to deal with and address those blighted properties, but then also a citywide home ownership. And so I think working with mayors within our communities, a lot of things that happens in the state, across the state, up here in Western Maryland, we need maybe someone to come talk directly to us at times, because it may not be the same thing for Baltimore City or the same thing for Montgomery County as it would be in Hagerstown or in Cumberland. And so working directly with mayors and council people who know what their residents need, also rent stabilization. I had 3 people in closing comments. Again, in conflict resolution as the mayor of the city, this is our major thing that we're hearing the most about. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I believe that was everybody on that question. So another huge topic that a lot of folks reached out to us to ask about was foreign policy. Can you tell us a little bit about how you would approach foreign policy issues with specific regard to the war in Ukraine and the conflict in Gaza? And I'm going to start off with Peter Koharis.
So I've worked in famine zones in Thailand and Sudan with refugees. I've worked for decades on human rights cases, and I'm on the board of a human rights organization. I've lived, worked, and traveled in more than 50 countries, most of them in Africa and Asia, and some in Latin America. I've represented and negotiated with ministers and even a head of state on disputes. I've litigated who caused a war, the only time in history that the issue of who was responsible for a war was ever set before an international tribunal. And I've published dozens of articles on US foreign policy. I have a deep understanding of foreign policy. I grieve at the suffering that I'm seeing both in Ukraine and that I'm seeing in Gaza. I also grieve at the suffering that
15.
the people of Israel went through and what the hostage families are going through right now. These are not abstractions to me. These are very personal. I've seen and witnessed these kinds of things with my own eyes. I will try to be guided by moral authority as well as legal authority in how we conduct our foreign affairs.
Thank you. Deputy Secretary McLean Delaney.
Being a member of Congress, it's very important that you're tuned in to our international and foreign affairs. At the Department of Commerce and serving the administration, I did over 50 bilaterals across the world on connectivity, broadband concerns, but also issues related to hate speech, issues related to uplifting women. And it is important that we engage and that we are seen as a player. And I never forget, one of them, they said, Das Delaney, the world is watching. And if this is what democracy looks like, we don't want it. We have to make sure we remain that shining beacon of light. With respect to Israel, I do, Hamas is a terrorist organization. Israel does have a right to defend itself, but I think the humanitarian aid that we're giving is fantastic, and that we hope that a ceasefire will happen soon with all the hostages. We obviously, with Ukraine, have to support and push back because the world is watching, and NATO really needs us to step forward for our obligations.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go to George Gluck.
Thank you. The foreign policy issue plaguing the party right now, Democratic Party right now, is the war in Gaza. As I stated at a C-SPAN CD6 forum in 2018, the U.S. needs to be an honest broker in negotiations if we want to see Palestinians and Israelis living side by side peacefully. Both my parents were Holocaust survivors, so I personally know the importance of retaining a democratic Jewish state in Israel. In 2017, I joined about 20 other Jewish demonstrators, along with 60 or so others, protesting President Trump's attempt to create a Muslim registry. In 2019, I demonstrated in Tel Aviv, protesting the corrupt Israeli administration, and repeated that in DC over a year ago. I would love the opportunity to return to the Mideast as a member of Congress to help to return peace to the region.
Thank you. Delegate Lopez.
Thank you. So most of my professional background has been in domestic policy, either as a state legislator or a congressional staffer. And so it's clear, though, for anyone who watches the news, that the world is on fire right now, whether it's Russia and Ukraine or the Middle East or ongoing trade wars with China or threats in North Korea. It is clear that the U.S. has a specific role as a leader, and that's a very unique role in these international affairs. And I think that we should put our best foot forward in terms of promoting global security and promoting stability. And there's no way any of that is going to happen if we have a second term for President Trump. And so, I mean, the reality is like any foreign policy hinges upon the fact that the U.S. has credibility. And so, again, I think you look to the foreign policy experts to guide the specifics, but we have a political problem here that we have to address if we're going to be credible on the world stage.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go to Adrian Petrus next.
Yes, I mean, I was born in a communist country in Europe, so in Romania, so I understand how politics works in Europe. And our biggest challenge, and we need a good leadership in Congress, because the biggest challenge that we have is how to keep NATO together. We see Turkey, a member of NATO nation, and they are going against Israel. They say they're going to attack Israel. What will happen if Israel retaliates against Turkey? Then the United States will have to go against Israel because we're part of NATO. So that's a very fragile thing that we need to protect. We need to figure out how to work with Turkey on that issue. Ukraine and Russia, they've been fighting for thousands of years. A lot of people don't want to admit that, but we have something to do with Ukraine. And we need to help the Ukrainian people to get out of that war. We need to put more pressure on Putin one way or another way. But even with war in Gaza, I understand Hamas attacked first. Israel had to to protect ourselves. But we have to think about the children in Gaza too at the same time. How can we protect them? And I think only if we could have UN troops going in and clean up the mess at this point, and then take Hamas out. But I think it had to be a United Nations war, not just Israel.
Well, thank you for your response. I'm going to go last but not least to Destiny Drake West. Or no, I'm so sorry. I skipped Mayor Martinez. So I'm going to go to Mayor Martinez and then Destiny. I am so sorry about that.
It's okay. I was like, did I answer it? I must have already answered it. As far as Ukraine is concerned, I don't want to be distracted. I'm going to be short around war because as a mediator, the neutrality is important to me. But I don't want us to get distracted about it's about democracy and protecting democracy. As far as Gaza, I don't believe any military option can bring just an end to conflict. I agree that in order for us to get to a two-party state or anything like that, we have to first make sure that we're protecting human life and the innocent human life. And so I stand with Vice President Harris with the ceasefire and then getting back to a two-state solution.
Thank you so much. And now, last but not least, Destiny Drake West.
Thank you. So in regard to Ukraine, I agree with House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries in that there is a bipartisan national security bill already out there that if the House majority, the Speaker of the House would just bring it up for a vote, maybe we could get somewhere. I don't believe it's the perfect solution, but it is a solution that has a lot of support. And so I'll leave that there. In terms of Israel, as a mother of 3 children who is almost 8 months pregnant, I can tell you watching the news and seeing the footage since the terrible attacks by Hamas on Israel on October 7th has been overwhelming for me. Watching children and babies shake and scream and cry from the trauma and the fear of violence is just a lot. And so I believe that I'm not alone in this. I've heard from families all across the district, regardless of their faith, believe that we should end this violence, this senseless violence. And so again, as I've done before on record, I'm calling for a ceasefire. And hopefully we can get the hostages released and some humanitarian aid to the region. And I believe that where there's a will, there is a peaceful way forward. And so the remainder of my seconds, I would like to take a moment of silence in honor of those who have lost their lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your responses on that issue. I know that's a particularly challenging one as well in this time. I'm going to move on next to something a little bit closer to home, recognizing that we are running short on time. I'm going to ask candidates to keep your responses brief to this question, and it should be relatively simple. I believe you can all probably answer this in a single word, and that is, do you live in the district? And I'm going to start with Peter Koharis.
Not yet. 2 words.
Thank you. Deputy Secretary McLean Delaney.
No, I live very adjacent to Congressman Trone, very close to the district, but I don't think I know it well, know and love the district.
Thank you so much. George Gluck.
Before the redistricting, my wife and I lived just inside CD6. After redistricting, we lived just outside CD6. However, I spend a great deal of my time, as I told you, in CD6 teaching. In fact, if any of you have students at Quince Orchard, at the end of next week, I'll be teaching Thursday and Friday computer science there. So have your students come say hello to me.
Thank you so much. Delegate Leslie Lopez.
Yes, I do live in the district, and it's where I own a home and where I'm raising my family and where I'm very proud to represent.
Thank you so much. Adrian Petrus.
Muting. No, I do not. I do have a lot of roots to Western Maryland, where I have spent most of my time. My parents just sold that house over there a few years ago after my father passed away. So I do have in-laws over there that I spend a lot of time in Western Maryland.
Thank you so much. Mayor Martinez.
Yeah, so born and raised. I'm born and raised here in Western Maryland, Hagerstown, Washington County girl. And George, South High tomorrow, I will be telling students to come see you.
Thank you so much. And Destiny Drake West.
I am proud to say that I achieved my long-held American dream of homeownership for the first time here in Germantown. Yes, I'm a proud resident of the 6th District. My children attend public schools here in the district. I will be giving birth to my baby next month here at a hospital in the district. So yes, I am a very proud 6th District resident.
Well, thank you so much, and congratulations as well. A little bit early. I'm gonna go next to. There were two other issues I wanted to touch on, but we are short on time here. So I'm gonna fold this into the closing statements, and we'll give everyone a minute and a half for that, if that's all right, Sharon. And that is electorally. The 6th district is perhaps the only swing district in the state of Maryland. And it is essential if we want to win the House of Representatives as Democrats next year that we hold on to the 6th district. So as part of your closing remarks, can you touch on your path to winning the general election if you are the nominee in November? And I'm going to start with Deputy Secretary McLean Delaney.
So I think the 6th district is a swing district. And I think that with the redistricting that just happened, because I was going back, I was really close to the line and a little bit further out, but it's a big district of 5 counties with different types of issues that impact them, from investment more in Western Maryland, in the middle with transportation and some of the education issues in Frederick. And then in Montgomery County, we have some of our own transportation and different issues. But I believe that what you need to do to really to win this district and keep it blue is to have the common sense, common ground pathway that I've talked about, meeting people where they are, listening, but also being pragmatic and fasting solutions which uplift lives across the district. The issues that I'm going to talk about are issues of driving investment into a lot of these towns that have felt like they have been left behind, helping with educational resources, talking about kids and families and issues concerning
15.
privacy, AI, and other issues as they impact them, reproductive rights. And it's really important to have the resources and messaging to talk to all of the voters and have them see how coming together in this toxic environment on the Hill, how we can fight against Trump as Democrats and lift and give a better response to what they want to do.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go to George Gluck next.
Okay. In 1992, I donated time and money to then candidate Bill Clinton. But after he and the Democratic Congress passed NAFTA and sent 700,000 jobs overseas, it was clear to me that the party leadership had left FDR behind. In 2021, I decided that after 3 decades of being a progressive Democrat, followed by 2 decades of being a progressive Green, it's time to run for the CD6 as a prudent progressive Democrat again. It's easy to predict that everybody listening will vote for whichever of us win the primary, as Andrew said, but that's not the prize we all seek. At the beginning of this year, Democratic CD6 registrants numbered about 224,000, Republicans 187,000, and unaffiliated other and libertarians over 150,000. As the candidate that spent 2 decades outside of both the misguided Democratic and Republican parties, I am uniquely positioned to garner enough independent votes to assure we win in November and regain the House majority.
15.
Thank you. That's good.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Delegate Lopez.
Sure, thank you. I feel like I'm probably in the best position to win this general election, because ultimately it's going to come down to Neil Parrott and Dan Cox, and I've already won them both. I served with both of those guys for 4 years, and I don't know, unfortunately, hours of tape of me debating with Dan Cox. And you know what? I won every time. And I was on a committee with him for 4 years. I know every trick he has in the book. And so outside of taking on those extremists and those radicals, I think what's really important is someone who can connect with independents in the general election and get 20% of those independents in addition to turning out the Democratic vote. And I think you do that by being someone who is strong and principled in their Democratic Party ideals, but you're doing it in a way that's bipartisan and bringing people into the fold and being inclusive. And so every single bill that I've passed as a lawmaker has had bipartisan support in one way or another. The easy bills, yes, absolutely, but the hard bills too, like getting a gun bill passed 2 years ago. I'm the author of the ban on ghost guns. I worked, unfortunately, with Senator Michael Huff to get that passed. If you don't know who he is, Google him. He'll be holding an NRA sign because he is a Second Amendment advocate
15.
through and through. And so you have to learn how to deal with the people who aren't exactly like you, who are believe different things. But that's the only way to achieve bipartisan support. Know how to fight with respect and know how to be inclusive.
Fine.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm going to go now to Adrian Petrus.
For me, the biggest challenge is to win the nomination, of course. Once I win the nomination, independent party will go with me. I'm very not cocky, but I've been independent all my life until I switched to the Democrat Party about 8 years ago. I know what they're looking for. I also been in Western Maryland a long time. Families over there are well connected, and my former in-laws and their families and other friends' families, they're all Republicans, of course. But I know I could bring the Republican Party together to vote for me also in the general elections, because I want to bring a high-speed rail to connect Deep Creek Lake, Cumberland, Hagerstown, and then to DC, so those folks could come and get better jobs in DC, but still live in the mountains. If we put high-speed rail, like a medleft train that could go within an hour from Cumberland to DC, that would be very effective. And also then, you know, for me, it's trying to bring two parties together somehow, take the good
15.
and bad from both of them, and just bring in one under one umbrella all the good stuff and leave the bad out. So that's who I am, and that's what I'll be able to do during general election, is bring the parties together, bring the voters to see that it's with me, not with the Republican candidate. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Mayor Martinez.
Yeah, so I'm a nonpartisan mayor in a red county. And I just, this is the funnest thing for me, was whenever I was confirmed for the Affordable Housing Board of Trustee, because Senator Quarterman, who is the senator in my area, also, I love him. He loves me, right? But we're two different ends of the spectrum. But he had to speak, and he spoke very good things about me, and he spoke the truth. He spoke the truth that Takesha's fair, Takesha shows up, Takesha does a lot of work in her community to make sure to heal divides. That's who I am. That's what I've been doing. Actually, in 2012 election, 2014 election, 2016 election, and 2018 election, presidential and then our county elections, I was facilitating the conversations. I want to tap into Democratic Black women that are in the Western Maryland area. In this county, as the mayor of the city, I fight very hard. I fight very hard every single day. I fight hard with pettiness in politics. I fight so hard with pettiness in politics that I'm surprised that more Democrats aren't coming up here and asking, how can they make sure that the constituents that are in this area do get what they deserve, and that people are not being petty because it's a Democratic Black woman leading this city and taking away our things or trying to sabotage this administration. I deal with it every single day. I live it and I breathe it. Actually, you guys should check out the State of the City video that we just released yesterday, because it really shows my leadership and it shows my ability to work with Republicans and Democrats. Also, I was unanimously voted for mayor, appointed by 2 Republicans that was on the elected body.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go to Destiny Drake West.
Thank you for this opportunity tonight. I really appreciate it. I'll close with this final thing. I am the best candidate to keep this seat blue because I have worked very hard over the past 8 months to build a robust and very diverse base of supporters that spans across demographics, Republicans, Democrats, unaffiliated, young people, seniors, farmers, returning citizens, business owners, and so on and so forth. And what they all see is a very clear distinction, not just my physical appearance, from candidates like Neil Parrott or Dan Cox, but also who I am as a leader, how I show up authentically. They can see that I care about all people. And for me, it's people over politics always. I'm always going to choose our community, all 5 counties of our district, so that no one feels overlooked or forgotten. And that's the thing that people have come to trust in me and expect of me. And that's why so many of them have dubbed me their next Congresswoman already before the results have come in. So I am really excited to continue on this journey and earn even more support.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, I will go to Peter Coharis.
Thank you. So we're all basically engaged in a job interview with all of you. And with any job interview, you have to ask yourself, what is the record of the candidate? Not just promises and what they'd like to do and hope to do, but what have they achieved? What can they point to in terms of success and achievement, so that you know that when we talk about doing things and serving the 6th district, we have something that's behind that, a record to point to. I've have a record of building a business and promoting economic development, not only in the United States, but throughout the world. I have a long record of protecting and serving others, including some of the most vulnerable people in the world. I've worked for the Democratic Party for years. I'm a proud lifelong Democrat. I didn't just come to it. I didn't leave it and come back. I worked as the executive director of the Democratic platform for John Kerry. I've done work for presidential candidates and down ballot candidates for years. I've worked on a high level, and I've knocked on doors on dirt roads for Barack Obama in South Carolina. I've been fighting to serve people my entire life. I've taken on the US government, and I've taken on despots in Africa and Asia who were exploiting and torturing people. One of my clients was